On the video, it shows her refusing to fight back, and yet they beat her to death.
We have a very disturbing story about the death of a young American woman in Mexico and the search for answers from the people she was traveling with, people she says or thought were her friends. Shanquella Robinson died last month at a resort near Cabo San Lucas. Now, Mexican prosecutors are trying to get an unnamed American woman extradited to Mexico to face the charges. They say that Robinson was killed in a, quote, direct attack, not an accident.
October 2022, Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. 6 friends, a luxury villa, ocean views. Everything looks perfect. But by the end of that weekend, one of them would be dead. And the people she trusted most would have a story ready. A story that almost worked. Her name was Shanquella Robinson, 25 years old, Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of person who lit up every room she walked into. She saved up, planned this trip, packed her bags and flew to Mexico with people she called her friends. She never came home. When her family got the call, they were told it was alcohol poisoning. Shanquella drank too much. That was the story. But then a video surfaced. And everything changed. This is the story of what really happened in Cabo, who was in that room, what that video showed, and why 3 years later nobody has gone to prison. Her name was Shanquella Robinson. But before we get into what happened to her, you need to know who she was first. Because this case has been so consumed by the horror of how she died that the world almost forgot to talk about how she lived. Shanquella grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was the daughter of Salamandra and Bernard Robinson, 2 parents who poured everything into their little girl. She was bright, ambitious, the kind of daughter that made her parents proud just by walking into a room. She built something for herself. She ran her own business, a hair care brand, and was pushing it forward with the kind of energy that only comes from someone who genuinely believes in their dream. She was 25. She had plans. She had a future mapped out in her head. She also had a circle, a tight group of people she moved through life with, people she laughed with, traveled with, trusted completely. That trust would cost her everything. October 28, 2022. The group, 6 individuals in total, boarded a flight to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. It was supposed to be a celebration, a getaway. Sun, water, good energy, good people. They checked into a luxury rental villa, the kind of place that looks like a dream on the outside. Infinity pool, ocean air, the whole thing. Phones came out. Photos were taken. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a group of young people living their best lives. Nobody watching those early moments could have imagined what was coming. Shanquella arrived healthy. She was in good spirits. There were no signs, at least none visible to the outside world, that anything was wrong between her and the people she came with. But something shifted inside that villa. Something we may never fully understand. Less than 24 hours after landing in Mexico, Shanquella Robinson was dead. The group contacted emergency services. By the time help arrived, she was unresponsive. She was pronounced dead shortly after. And then the phone calls started. Her family back in Charlotte picked up. On the other end, voices they recognized, voices they trusted, voices delivering a verdict that felt shocking but simple. Alcohol poisoning. She had too much to drink. Her body gave out. It was a tragedy, they said, a horrible, senseless accident, nobody's fault. Salamandra and Bernard Robinson were devastated. They were grieving. They had no reason, not yet, to question the people their daughter had called friends. So they accepted it. They planned a funeral. They started making arrangements. They leaned on each other through the kind of pain no parent should ever have to carry. But grief and silence don't always stay together. Back in Cabo, Mexican authorities had already begun their own process. Standard procedure when a foreign national dies on their soil. An autopsy was ordered. A medical examiner got to work. What they found had nothing to do with alcohol. Shanquella Robinson had a broken neck. a severe spinal cord injury, the kind of trauma that does not come from drinking, the kind of trauma that comes from another person. Mexican officials were clear. This was not an accident. This was not a medical episode. This was the result of a physical attack. While her family in Charlotte was still deep in grief, still believing the story they had been handed, investigators in Mexico were already looking at this case through a completely different lens. A criminal one. Then the video got out. Nobody announced it. Nobody warned the family. It just appeared, spreading fast across social media, shared millions of times before anyone in an official capacity could even respond. And once people watched it, once they saw what was on that footage, the alcohol poisoning story was finished. Done. The world now had questions, millions of them. And the 6 people who flew home from Cabo, they were about to find out that some things cannot be buried, no matter how deep you dig. There is a moment when a lie meets evidence that everything collapses at once. For the Cabo 6, that moment came without warning. A clip, a few seconds of footage, shot inside the villa on someone's phone by someone in that very room, uploaded, shared, and suddenly everywhere. The internet does not forget, it does not slow down, and it does not forgive. Within hours, millions of people had seen it. Within days, it had traveled across every platform, every continent, every corner of social media. News outlets picked it up, commentators reacted, activists mobilized. And Salamandra Robinson, a mother still deep in the fog of fresh grief, learned the truth about her daughter's final moments from the internet, not from investigators, not from the people who were there, from a video on her phone screen. Think about what that feels like for a second. The footage was brutal. A young woman, naked, disoriented, unable to defend herself, being struck repeatedly by another person inside that villa, standing over her, hitting her with force, while others stood around, watching, filming. Not one person in that room pulled the attacker away. Not one voice on that recording said stop. The atmosphere was not panic. It was not confusion. It was casual. That detail, more than anything else, is what burned itself into the public consciousness. The violence was horrifying, but the calm surrounding it, that was something else entirely. That pointed to something premeditated, something practiced, something that did not begin the moment that camera started recording. Mexican authorities had already completed their examination before the footage went public. But now, with the clips circulating globally, the pressure on officials intensified dramatically. Their findings aligned with everything the video suggested. Broken neck, severe spinal cord damage, blunt force trauma, brain swelling. These were not the findings of a body that had simply consumed too much alcohol and shut down. These were the findings of a body that had been attacked. Prosecutors in Baja California Sur moved fast. They classified the case as femicide, the killing of a woman because of her gender, and issued an arrest warrant targeting one specific individual from the group, Daejhanae Jackson. The woman visible in the footage. The woman the Robinson family identified as the primary aggressor. The woman who, years later, would change her name to Emani Green and fight every legal attempt to hold her accountable. Mexico had a warrant. Mexico had a classification. Mexico had done its part. Now it was America's turn. It did not go the way anyone expected. Shanquella's body was returned to the United States, and a second autopsy was conducted domestically. But by the time American medical examiners got to work, the body had already been embalmed in Mexico. That matters enormously. Embalming alters tissue. It changes what pathologists can and cannot detect. Evidence that might have been recoverable fresh becomes significantly harder to confirm after that process. The result of the American autopsy, cause of death undetermined. Not assault, not homicide, undetermined. 2 countries, 2 medical teams, 1 victim. Completely opposite conclusions. And here is the part that should make every single person watching this deeply uncomfortable. The U.S. conclusion, the vaguer one, the one that opened the door to doubt, became the document that American federal authorities leaned on when deciding whether to pursue criminal charges. April 2023. The FBI and the Department of Justice made their announcement. No federal criminal charges. Insufficient evidence, they said. No reasonable guarantee of conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. Case closed. Mexico had a warrant ready. An extradition request was sent through proper channels. It landed at the U.S. State Department. It sat there. Nobody moved on it. Nobody escalated it. Nobody brought Daejhanae Jackson or anyone else from that group before a criminal court. The Cabo Six went home, resumed their lives, and for a long stretch of time it genuinely appeared that justice for Shanquella Robinson would never arrive. Her parents buried their daughter, fought through their devastation, and made a decision. If the criminal system would not move, they would find another way. Grief can break people. Or it can build them into something prosecutors, defendants, and entire government agencies were not prepared to face. Salamandra Robinson chose the second path. With civil rights attorney Ben Crump, one of the most recognizable legal names in America, leading the charge alongside attorney Sue Ann Robinson, the family filed a wrongful death lawsuit that sent a clear message to everyone who thought this was finished. It was not finished. The suit named all 6 travel companions. It also named the FBI and the U.S. State Department, holding federal institutions directly accountable for what the family described as deliberate negligence in handling the investigation. The damages sought were not symbolic. $100 million. That number was not chosen randomly. It represented the weight of what was taken: a daughter, a future, a business that would never grow, grandchildren that would never exist, a seat at a family table that would always be empty. The defendants responded the way powerful people with lawyers typically respond. They pushed back. Several members of the Cabo Six filed motions arguing the lawsuit belonged in Mexico, not North Carolina, because that was where the incident occurred. Others denied all allegations outright. The legal maneuvering was aggressive, calculated, and clearly designed to exhaust the Robinson family into giving up. It did not work. Federal claims against the FBI and State Department were eventually dismissed, a federal judge ruling those agencies fell outside the court's jurisdiction on the remaining matters. That ruling stung, but Sue Ann Robinson was direct about its purpose from the beginning. Getting federal officials into a courtroom was always partly about forcing them to publicly explain why the investigation stalled, why the extradition request was ignored, why a mother had to sue her own government just to get answers. That pressure did not disappear with the dismissal. Then came Emani Green, formerly Daejhanae Jackson, the individual named in Mexico's arrest warrant, the person the Robinson family identifies as the primary aggressor in the footage that shocked the entire world. She changed her name, moved frequently, made herself difficult to locate and therefore difficult to serve with legal papers, a procedural necessity before any lawsuit can formally proceed against a defendant. Her legal team argued she had never been properly served, that deadlines were missed, that the case against her should be thrown out entirely on technical grounds. June 4, 2026, a judge looked at those arguments and disagreed. The court found that the Robinson family had made genuine, good faith efforts to find her despite the name change and constant movement. The motion to dismiss was denied. Emani Green could not hide behind paperwork and relocation any longer. She is now formally part of this lawsuit whether she wants to be or not, but her legal team was not done. New court filings introduced a self-defense argument, claiming Green had acted in response to provocation. that Shanquella had been aggressive, that her behavior leading up to the altercation justified what followed. They also cited excessive drinking on Shanquella's part. Let that land for a moment. A woman on video naked, unable to stand properly, being struck by someone larger and more composed, and the legal argument being constructed is that she provoked it. The Robinson family's response was immediate. Their attorneys called it exactly what it appeared to be, an attempt to put the victim on trial instead of the aggressor. As of right now, the civil lawsuit against the Cabo Six is moving forward in Mecklenburg County Court in North Carolina. A hearing regarding a motion to freeze proceedings, filed by defendant Carlo Cook, is scheduled for July 22, 2026. Other defendants continue fighting venue, jurisdiction, and procedure at every available turn. Meanwhile, Mexico's arrest warrant remains active. The criminal case remains technically open, and not one person has faced a single day of criminal consequences for what happened inside that villa. Shanquella Robinson was 25 years old. She packed a bag, boarded a flight, and trusted the wrong people with her life. Her mother has spent nearly 4 years making sure that decision does not get buried alongside her daughter. This fight is not over, and neither is this channel's commitment to telling stories that matter, stories about real people, real failures, and real families, refusing to accept silence as an answer. If this story moved you, if Shanquella's story made you feel something, share this video. That single action puts her name in front of someone who has never heard it. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below telling us what part of this case disturbs you most, because the next case we cover is already waiting.